Mr. Kelly is going to play a video for you. There's going to be a couple more surveys that go up. I want to know how you feel about the class. It's the first time we've run the class this way, and I'm going to ask you to fill them out with "will you please," but those aren't optional either, so fill those out, please. If you're looking for the 3 letters, open up your strong interest inventory to the second page back, and it's going to say your theme code, and this individual only has 1 letter, so most people have 3 letters, so put that down, and some of you are going to have no theme at all. Write that down too.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the reason that I showed that video is to highlight the fact that while you're in college, there will be new careers invented. There will be technology that we didn't even think of. When my grandfather was born in 1903 out in the backwoods, they didn't have certain things. He was the first person. He wrote off to this place called Sears and asked for this new thing called a radio kit. And his father went out and helped him cut down 2 popple trees, and they strung this wire across it, and he built the radio. And people would come over to their house, and they would not believe that people's voices were coming across the airwave into the house. They honestly thought there was somebody in the next room talking in the tin can with the string to do it. To go to the moon or even to fly was a fantasy when my grandfather was born. When my parents came into the world in the late 30s, there was this cartoon called Dick Tracy, and he'd pull out his wristwatch and he'd talk into the wristwatch and could communicate in a small little device. They were already flying airplanes, so that was normal, but it was still fantasy to go to the moon. And the concept of a machine that could think was entirely foreign. The strong interest inventory we're going to do today was first started being thought about in the 1920s. Now, it's not held over from the 20s, it's been adapted, but it is behind the times a little bit when it comes to technology. So I come along in the 50s, and we have computers now, but they take up massive amounts of room. We have manned flight and the NASA program and rockets. You know, the Germans have fired off rockets. Both the Soviet Union and America went and got all the German scientists and brought them back so that we could get their technology in rockets. Go ahead and use that brains to go ahead and build our space program. So my grandfather's still alive, and I was sitting in his living room visiting him, and he was setting up a camera to take a picture of the first person to walk on the moon. Now, to you guys, it's old hat. But to him, that was total fantasy, total science fiction. By the time I was just joining the Air Force in college time frame, I started playing my online role-playing game using a mainframe computer. And by 1983, I had a computer in my house. And my first kid was born, so my kid was born into a house that had a computer just like you guys. Something that was total fantasy in my grandparents' and parents' life. And now, we all carry that cell phone that was Dick Tracy. If you believe what's in that video, that half of what you learn this year will be outdated by the time you graduate, what is it that's in your mind that you're going to create that's total fantasy to you? I've taught other courses, and I've required smaller courses to write essays on it, and people are always taking what they know already. If you think of the engineers, and they just went with what they knew in my grandfather's day in 1905, 1906, the answer was you can't fly. You can't go to the moon. There's no such thing as a computer. So as we look at this strong interest inventory, remember it's about 10 years old when it comes to the types of careers that it might suggest to you. It's based on some absolutely fantastic work by Strong and Holland. I really like this. And what it does is it goes ahead and it measures what your interests are, not necessarily what your skills are in those areas. And I'm going to rocket through this pretty quick. What I'd ask is you close your assessment, because just like the Myers-Briggs, I like to talk a little bit about the assessment first and then go over the assessment with you. Because if you're digging in there, you're going to hit some stuff and you're going to go, ew, it says, and I'll talk about the ew page here in a second. But it's not your skills or your abilities. It is your interest in certain things. All right? What all the research has shown since the 1920s when Holland was first starting to do this is somebody who's doing something that they're interested in is and has enjoyed what they're doing more than somebody who's not interested in what they're doing, right? Sort of makes common sense. So, what they want to look at and what they started doing this for was the military in World War I was bringing people in and saying, okay, you're going to be a truck driver and you're going to be airplane, and they were just assigning people jobs. And they wanted people just to fall into that. Well, that didn't work too well, so they decided to find out and find some way to give a test. So in 1920, this started as a thing for the military to figure out what sort of jobs you'd get. And it has grown much beyond that. They have literally studied millions of people. And the people who like what they do and like their life are added to the database. So you had to take a questionnaire or an assessment that had 292 questions, and they compared your answers to that huge database full of people who said they like their life and they like their job. The thought process being is if you like the same sort of things they like, that's how you end up in certain job categories. So let's take a look at some of the areas. There are 6 potential codes. I'm going to go into each one of them and the types of things that sort of give that background all the way through all 6. Then we're going to go through the report. All right, the realistic theme. People who are realistic are risk takers. They like to go out and do stuff. Risk can be physical risk. Risk can be fiscal risk. It also can be emotional risk. They also like to work on stuff that when they're done, they can see that which they have created. They have a tendency to like to work with their hands. They like to be out accomplishing things. So you can see that up there. And Bob is passing out a sheet that's going to give you a rundown on the different ones so that you've got it. Generally speaking, they would rather do action than thought. So, guess what? I'm an R, and if you remember my Myers-Briggs speech, my background is to do, think, do. So guess what? I like to jump in and do things like that. And I'm definitely a risk taker. Here are careers that people with a strong R quotient typically go into. And many, many, many of the engineers fall in this rate. The ones that are interested in being out there and actually building and doing rather than researching and doing theoretical thought. But also, some medical skills do that. Now, what you have to realize is some careers have a broad brush. A doctor that likes to cut into a person, fix their heart, close you back up, probably has a strong realistic score. They've got great manual dexterity. They love taking the risk of putting your life in their hands. They go in and they fix it, and when you live, bada bing, they're a happy camper. Other doctor skills, think about your pediatrician. You'd come in with a runny nose. They'd try to guess what was wrong with you. They'd give you something. Their realistic quotient is not as high. Or the guys that take care of me, an old person, an internist. It has to be a much more, I wonder what's up. Is it his blood pressure? Is it his cholesterol? We'll try a little of this. We'll try a little of that. So across the continuum of a particular career, you can have different quotients. I used the medical example here instead of an engineering example, but it's true for engineering. There are some engineering jobs that are not that hands-on. And so don't worry about it if you don't have a high R score. The next one is the investigative theme. The investigative theme really like to work on abstract things. They like getting out there. So if on your Myers-Briggs, you had that whole intuitive, perceiving type mode, and then you have an I theme, you're probably very much into getting into that higher level theoretical understanding how things work. If you're an introvert, and you have the investigative theme, you've got a double reason why you like to work independently. So as you hear this and as you look at your scores, think about your personality types and think about the type of work or engineering that might match what your interests are as well as your personality type. People who are investigative are absolutely fantastic at collecting and organizing data. So do you think somebody who's investigative that in their Myers-Briggs also has sensing would do well? So you can see I talked about sensing and I talked about intuitive. So regardless of your personality type, sensing or intuitive, if you match it with an investigative theme, you delve down in. Generally, somebody who is investigative, if I was to ask them if they wanted to be an engineer who sold engineering stuff, let's say you went to work for Swagelok as a technical sales representative, that would be your equivalent of wanting to poke your eyes out with a pencil, like computer programming is for me. Don't lock me in a cubicle, because they really don't like to sell. They like to look, they like to see what's out there. They're not about the bottom line, they're about what is that next thing out in the future that I could create. These are the types of careers that are generally investigative. So your software engineers generally fall with an I somewhere along the line. But so does a police detective. Why do you think a police detective might be investigative? And I'll go ahead and pick on somebody in the back row. In red, why do you think police detectives? Yep, that's you. All the way in the back row. In red. Glasses? Yes. Okay. You don't watch any police shows? You're too busy studying, right? All right. All the detectives have to get in there and dig and analyze and try to put pieces together to come up with the results of something. So you can see there's a variety of different people. It shows that family practitioner in there. They're not so much fixing things as trying to figure out why it is that, you say you've got a tummy ache and you're puking. Are you pregnant? Do you have the flu? Did you eat some bad melon from Colorado? If you're watching the news right now. So they got to try to figure it out. Software engineers and computer programmers. Okay, the next one is the artistic theme. People who are artistic, remember, this is interest, not necessarily skill. So if you've got an artistic quotient as one of your top three, and you go, well, I can't sing, and I can't play an instrument, and I can't paint, I am willing to bet that you enjoy either going to concerts or you actually will admit that you had fun going to museums with your parents when you were younger and just enjoyed the arts. Because this is about interest, not skill. And the second part of the inventory, those of you that followed the directions and did the second part, we're going to discuss really quick interest level versus confidence. For many of us, it's hard to have a vocation in the arts. And so we have to go ahead and do our leisure and recreation. We have to go and do that in our own time. These are some of the particular types of jobs they go into. I realize that our engineering school is not a main line into architecture school, but I've known many, many civil engineers who have decided that they want to go the architecture route after they've been through it. I don't know if any of you are interested. Why do you think a lawyer is artistic? They know how to craft arguments. There's certain types of lawyers that have to have a very artistic back to them. Think about the O.J. Simpson trial, and when the guy stood up and said, if the glove don't fit, you can't commit. That was artistic flair that caused that jury, and he had O.J. try to put the glove on, and it wouldn't fit. And it sent a very visual theme. So your defense lawyers, your prosecutors that have to stand up in front of a jury have to have an artistic theme. Do you think a title lawyer needs that? Absolutely not. You're going to see a little bit later, they're more conventional in their type. Chefs are very artistic. All right, social theme. Social theme. Those are generally what people with an S like. They like to help. They like to facilitate. They like to solve problems through discussion. So if you've got an S-type theme, you're probably going to enjoy some type of engineering that allows you to work in groups, or perhaps end up going into teaching engineering, or perhaps going into a company working as an engineer, but you fulfill your interest in S by becoming that middle-level mentor to the young engineers that are coming in. Those of you who go on to work in a different variety of engineers, when you find that mentor in the company that's actually taking the time to help and move you forward, I bet you they have a strong S theme. These are the type of careers that they get into. You'll notice I don't have any engineering ones up there because the S theme can be across all of them. Enterprising. Enterprising. The archetypical enterprising person is Donald Trump. He gets out there, he starts a company. One time he makes $1 million, the next time he loses $1 million, then he makes $3 million, then he does a TV show. And as soon as he gets done getting it set up, what does he do? He turns it over to somebody else to run. He's not into running a business. He's into purchasing, making things go, looking for leadership, power, and status. Engineers that start their own firm, that have their own consulting firm, probably have a high E. Ones that Bob doesn't twist their arms to come here and talk, probably have a high E. Ones when he goes, well, I'm thinking about doing this class, and they go, hey, can I have a section? Are probably engineers with a high E because they like getting out in front of people. Can you guess that maybe one of mine is an E? We also, with an E, like to participate in competitive activities. We like to compete, and guess what we like to do? We like to win. These are careers. CEOs and CFOs generally all have a strong E quotient. There are E's in engineering. Remember, you can have multiple codes, right? Finally, there's the conventional theme. These are the ones that make the boiler room run. These are the ones that ensure that the day-to-day work gets done. They enjoy doing the data. They enjoy working in large organizations. They are incredibly important to the machine. Many, many, many engineers have a C quotient because you enjoy getting in there, you enjoy looking at the data, you enjoy going through. So if you've got a C and an I, you might enjoy working in a research laboratory in a large organization. So there's a variety of different things to look at. Systems design and computer programmers. Generally, large C. They've got to be very meticulous, working independently, going through. All right, so now you know the 6 different types that are out there. So those of you who have your report, go ahead and pull it out. And I'm going to go through. And what I want you to do is try to stay with me as I go through the pages. Page number 1 just gives you a general idea of how the report is laid out. And those of you who did both sections should have a 6-section report. Go ahead and turn to page 2. I've just grabbed somebody else's because I forgot to grab mine out of my file cabinet, so I don't have mine. But what you'll see is your code, 3 letters, 2 letters, 1 letter, or no code. And I'll explain no code in a while. But they are organized in highest to lowest. This particular person is an ECI. So their highest code is an E, and you can see in this graph down on the bottom, look at your graph, and if you see that it says anything higher than moderate, so this guy's got a high in enterprising. He's got a moderate in conventional, a moderate in investigative, and a moderate in realistic. His code then is an ECI. All right? They get these codes by matching your responses to that database and comparing it to how these codes have racked up in over, started in the 20s, so 91 years of data collection. All right, if we turn to the next page, page 3, what it does is it looks at your different scores, and it gives you your 5 top interest areas. When you look at those top interest areas, the way they do that is they go into your scores and the comparison to different careers. So this guy's has got enterprising as his high, and the highest thing in enterprising that he matched was law with a 62. But his top interest area is military, which comes from being realistic. And in the military, his standard score was 66. So his highest interest is military. This individual matches military the most. Then his highest score being enterprising, law is second because it had a 62. Sales is third because he had a 61 in that. Finance and investing is a C. He has a 61. And medical science under I is a 60. Those of you who have your report, what I want you to do is look at the numbers, look at the bottom number of your 5th career. Everybody find in their top 5 interest area, find number 5, see what the name is. After, it'll have a bracket, what category it came from, and see what that bottom number is. After you've got that bottom number, I want you to look through these other jobs that are on here, and I want you to write down number 5 and 6, career, down here, because nobody says you're just limited to 5 careers. The way you find number 5 and 6 is look for the next highest numbers. So this dude's bottom is medical science under I. So when I go there, it's 60. So when I look through here, there's a 58. So this guy's protective services would be number 6, and management would be number 7. I want you to write down 6 and 7. Once you've found 6 or 7, if you don't like any of number 1 through 5, throw them out. Now remember that video that I showed you. This is about 8 to 10 years behind, and if new careers are being invented every 4 years, some of the things you're interested in won't be in here. But think about the personality types and the things they do, and you can probably figure out if you're a fit for them or not. All right. The other thing I want to point out on here is areas of least interest. It's over on the other side of your top 5 interest areas, the areas of least interest. I had never taken this test until I went to work for Career Services last year. And when I took it, I was absolutely amazed, because my top interest area was the military, and I just had a 30-plus year career in it. My second one was politics and public policy, and when I was in the military, I was the chief negotiator for conventional arms control and worked with the National Security Council and did a lot of public speaking along those lines. And my third one was basically human relations, which is exactly what I'm doing at Career Services. So I have been lucky enough, without knowing what my interests were, to just naturally gravitate to things that I enjoy. And my least interest items were ones that I always knew I absolutely hated. And it pegged me. So depending on what mindset you're in when you take this, you can really get a good feel for whether or not what you like matches what you're going into. All right, let's turn to page 4. Page 4 is often called the page, because when people look at it, they go, I don't want to do that. All right, this is where they match the top 10 occupations that matched your responses. Remember I said the database is full of people who like their job and like their life. For example, my number one is maintenance housekeeping. That was my number one. Now, I was a janitor all the way through high school in my parents' lumber yard that my dad bought when he retired from DuPont. And then in college in my first year, I was a janitor in the dorm cleaning up the party room and the TV room. And, you know, I enjoyed it, but not what I want to do for a career. Another one that sometimes goes, is people see flight attendant and they go, ew, why a flight attendant? Or beautician, or cosmetologist, or flower store owner. What you have to remember is a lot of those things, if you've got a strong artistic component and you've got enterprising, you are going to be matched with people who like to create things. What do flower store owners do? They create flower arrangements. What do bakery store owners do? They create art with bakery. What does your E do? You want to own your own business. What's something that you can own your own business and be artistic at? So if you want to be a graphic designer and own your own business, it may not show graphic designer on here. Why? Because the whole web and developing all these beautiful web pages and doing that, you're not going to see web developer on here. So think through it. So look at your top 10 occupations here. You, on the next, I think it's 4 pages, if you flip through them, page 5, page 6, through page 8. 6 through 8, the next 4 pages, this is where they pull those top 10 occupations. So I want you to do exactly the same thing again here. This guy's number 10 is pharmacist. So I've got to look up pharmacist. I can find it under I, because it starts off with an I. It's got a score of 50. So for this guy to find his 11th and 12th occupation or 13th occupation that they're interested, I've got to look through these graphs to find one that's just under 50. Go ahead and do that. And on page number 3, write down your 11th and 12th occupation. And if any of the 10 you don't like, throw them out. All right, if there's an occupation on here that you really don't know what it is and why it would come out, on the Miami University Career Services webpage, there is a link to a thing called Focus 2. I gave it to you in my first lecture that I did with you. If you go into Focus 2, you don't necessarily have to take the assessments that are in there, but there's absolutely fantastic information on a whole bunch of careers. You can click on the career. It'll give you a little blurb. It'll give you the outlook. It'll talk about different professional organizations. So if you aren't sure of a career that this is telling you, go to the Focus 2, log in. It's free to you. You've got to put in the little code. It's all right there on the web page. And research the career a little bit. And do more than just click on the career. There's a little box on the left-hand side you've got to go through. And there's 10 or 12 different things you can click on to learn about it. All right. Does anybody have a question about the top 10 items they have on there? They aren't sure what they are. Yes, ma'am. A person who's a research and development manager would be somebody that would go in to work for a laboratory, and you would have a group of engineers or scientists that worked for you, and you would manage the overall program. So you'd be the one that would make sure that you got the money flowing in. You'd be the one that would be approving the different things that they're investigating. So you like to be in the research area, but you're not necessarily the one that wants to be doing the experiments. You're the one that wants to manage the people that are doing the experiments. And generally, in these jobs, I'll come back to this, let me finish this. Generally speaking, you won't go directly into being an R&D manager. You'll start off as a laboratory tech step 1, and you'll work through. And then after gaining some experience, then you'll move up into the next level. All right. This assessment does not take into account age or education level. Does not take into account age or education level. So in this case, it said R&D manager. So her answers gave her that as one of her potential jobs, but she's going to have to gain some experience to get it. You may even have to have a master's, because in the research arena, they use masters and PhDs, just like in academia, as ways to step forward. Where out in the working world, if you're just brilliant in the lab, they'll be happy to have you there with a bachelor's so long as you produce results. But if you want to move into the manager's position and you're competing with other people, you've got to have the same things they have to be able to move up. It does take into account your sex. So the females are matched against females who are happy in their job and happy with their life. And the same thing for males. Any other questions on any of the other jobs that are in here? Generally in a large audience, people don't want to say. That's why I tell you about Focus 2. But if you do have any particular questions, yes, sir. Yes. How many life insurance agents are working on, on commission, and they own, they go to Prudential and they get the okay to run an office. They're running their entire office. They're out there beating the bushes, getting business, making lots of money. It's incredibly enterprising. Now, if you're a person that sells insurance via the phone for a big company, you're not the enterprising type. You're the phone bank type that likes to be in there making the machine run. But most of your insurance agencies that are in a small town are owned and operated by that business person. And that's how they get the enterprising piece, because they're running their own business. Any others? If you want to go over your results with me, make an appointment with me through CareerLink, and I'll be happy to spend some time with you on it. Now, like I said, if you like your number 11 or 12 better, cross it out, move it through. Let's move to page 8. Page 8 tries to take your 292 questions that you responded to and give you an idea of your personal style, scales, preferences. And it has a range here based on the way that you answered. Down the middle is mid-range. So if you're mostly down the middle of this scale, it means you can float either way, and so you're, sometimes you'll want to prefer working alone, and sometimes you'll want to work with people. If you'll notice, above 35 and above 65, the word clear. That means you have a clear proclivity for that. The first pairing is work style, whether you prefer to work alone or whether you prefer to work with people. If you clearly are out there in the 65 and 75 with working with people, you'll want to be in a job where you work with people. Most likely, if you're going to be a computer programmer, you're going to want to be a very special type of computer programmer, not one who writes codes in a cubicle. On the other hand, if you're all the way over as a very clear work alone, enjoys data, ideas, and reserved, maybe something more investigative, something that you're allowed to work by yourself. The next one is learning environment. Should help you a little bit here as a student. You probably already know whether you prefer to learn by practical learning environments, by doing, or whether you prefer academic environments. Some of you may not be enjoying learning about engineering in here, but absolutely love your summer internship where you're getting to do it. Just understand what your personality is. Leadership style, once again, it's either comfortable taking it or not comfortable taking charge. Marry that with your Myers-Briggs, marry that with your group work, and you can figure out why that particular person is always stepping up and doing the work and why the other person is always willing to fall back and say, hey, let me research, put this stuff together, I'll bring it to the group. Different personality types. Risk-taking. If you've got a high R, anybody here with a really high R, where did you come out on risk-taking? 76. So that would make you very clear in liking to take risks, correct? 68. So anybody here not have any R at all, or a little tiny little R? Take a look back on page number, I think it's page 2. Let me find out. Go back to look on page 2, And does anybody have R as their bottom number? All right? So R is your bottom number. Where were you on the risk-taking scale? On page 8, what? Page 8, fourth one down, risk-taking. Never mind, 64. Okay. Okay. Realistic shouldn't have been your bottom one. It was your top one. On page 2, what do you, it's the bottom one? So all your scores are higher than 60? Okay. Interesting. Interesting. First time I bumped into that. Generally speaking, somebody with a very low realistic comes across as not wanting to take risks. So, let me talk to you afterwards. All right. So you can look at this and try to figure out what your personality type is. All right. I find most of the students are right in the mid-range here, and I don't know why. Just FYI. All right. This is your summary page. This is if you want to go home to your parents and show them your summary and you don't want to show them the whole results, or if you want to talk to your friends. This has absolutely everything on it. What your code is, what your top 5 are. Remember, if you like number 6 or 7, cross them out, write one in. What your top 10 are, what your personality score. But the reason why I'm focusing on this page is down here on the bottom. For those of you who got no code, some of you received a report with no code. Look down at the very bottom of the page, everybody, and you'll see the total number of responses, your response total. This one, there's a total of 291 possible responses. This person only answered 290 questions. They omitted one. Why would that happen? Remember, the test is timed. You had to answer by a certain time, and if you were sitting there going, it would move on. It did. You guys were probably all answering quick enough. Typicality index is a 21, which says that your answers were consistent. Most people, answers were consistent. Those of you who were inconsistent, where one time it would ask you a question that would indicate one thing, you'd answer one way, and then a little bit later it would ask you another question and you'd answer it another way. That just shows that you weren't staying in the same frame of mind as you were taking it, and you'll get an inconsistent score. The other thing that will cause a 0 code is if you disliked everything. If everything they asked you disliked, it won't give you a code. And if you absolutely liked everything, it won't give you a code. So if you look on here and you see that you strongly liked everything or you strongly disliked everything, it's not going to give you a code. All right? Because it can't tell what it is you have a proclivity for. You either hate the world and hate everything, or you love everything and unicorns and rainbows. All right? So that's how you get a 0 code. Now, for those of you who have yours, the next couple of pages talk about themes of greatest interest to you. And it talks about types of college majors that you could go into. And it breaks it down there. This guy's highest code was enterprising, and it breaks down a whole bunch of different careers. Then it does it for his second code and breaks down the college majors for that. And then it breaks down his investigative code. And so there's a whole bunch of different majors that, based on his response, it suggests. The next page, because it's page 2, because we're into the second part of the report, it breaks down some of the things that you can do on campus to match those top 5 jobs. So remember, this guy's highest thing was military. So it says, join the campus crisis response team, join ROTC, join student leadership training. Internship opportunities would be campus police department, working in Homeland National Security, or going in the military reserve. And then the college courses it suggests taking is firearm safety, logistics, and military science. And you see how it does that for each of your top 5 to give you some idea. For the 111th time, do not let an assessment tell you who you are. All right? Then using, page 3, using your occupational codes, it breaks down those top 10 that it gave you and shows the types of college courses and the related careers you could go into. So his number 1 was computer system analyst. It says get a BA in computer science. College courses are computer science, information technology, and related careers are software engineer, database administrator, and computer scientist. So I hope when this guy in section B gets his report, he's in computer science. It's his major, I hope. All right? The next is breaking down your work style one more time. And finally, at the end, we get into levels of skill, confidence by theme. You're going to see there's a different code for this. The code that you get on here is based on your confidence level. So this guy has a code of EIS when it comes to confidence. And it shows your confidence and your interest. So if your confidence and your interest matches, you've got high interest in that area. If your interest and your confidence, if your interest is higher and your confidence is close, you've got high interest. But if you're confident in it, but you have no interest, it tells you, yeah, possibly you're confident in it, but it's not something you like. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your attention. If you have any questions on this, come see me.